And it is, of course, Cork here with the leader of the Labour Party. Now, normally at this point, it's my pleasure to say we are suitably socially distanced, but we really are socially distanced. We've got half of London between us because, sadly, as you will be aware, Sir Keir has been... I think he's been pinged more than a GB table tennis player in Tokyo. He's been so many times, and he's pinged again, but he joins me. Sir Keir, just to clarify, you are well, are you? Good morning, Governor.
No, good morning, Nick. I'm perfectly well. Unfortunately, our little boy, who's 13, has got COVID.
Oh, God.
And so we're with him. We've all had to self-isolate in accordance with the rules. So he's got some symptoms. He's got some problems with his taste, but otherwise he's perfectly
okay. Well,
right.
we did give him our best from all the team here. I'm terribly sorry that it's hit the little lad, so I wish him a healthy recovery, and let's get him ready for the next season. I assume at the Emirates, like father, like son. Is he a Gooner as well? No, we don't have the answer to that question. We seem to have frozen with Sakir. Can you hear me, Sakir? No? Okay, we'll try and reboot that, as I just said, explained to you that we have Sakir on the end of a line, and we're hopefully going to be able to take some of the questions. Some of the issues that we might have to discuss are, of course, the fact that the pingdemic is still raging. There are measures that are being put in place by the government to try ensure that key workers can get back to work. This is going to be the critical workers avoid self-isolation via a testing scheme that's set up amid fears that infrastructure workers could collapse under the pressure. So that might be the first question. Sakir, just wish your boy the very best, would you, from all of us, and I hope you can get him back to the Emirates as soon as possible. Is he like father, like son, another Arsenal fan, Sakir?
Yeah, he is an Arsenal fan, I'm afraid. So we'll be back at the Emirates as soon as we can. But
all right.
As I say, at the moment,
okay, well, off the bench to take the first question, if you can, and it is from Rebecca in Horsham. You're through to Sakir. Rebecca, go ahead. Good morning.
Hi there. Good morning to you both.
Hello.
I wanted to ask. Hi, I wanted to ask what your views are on double vaccinators being allowed to not have to self-isolate should they get pinged.
Well, Rebecca, the sooner we can sort out this mess, the better, because the infection rates have gone through the roof. They're slightly coming down now, and as you know, lots of people are being pinged. The best way to deal with this is actually to get the infection rates down, which is why we opposed the government lifting all the restrictions in one go last Monday and thought we should have kept mandatory masks as a rule, working from home and more ventilation. But on the specific question, I think we need to look at the way the exemptions are working at the moment. There are now schemes, as you know, for critical workers who've been double vaccinated and are testing to go back to work. I keep an eye on those. I want those to work. That has been operating in some sectors already. So if that works, data, not dates, then we should support it and look again at the 16th of August, which is the date when the rules are supposed to change. But I'm hoping we can do something, because at the moment it's absolute chaos, as you'll know, in terms of keeping the economy going, keeping businesses going.
Sakir, you've been double jabbed under the idea from Tony Blair a week or so ago. You would not, providing you had a test, you would not, and it was negative, you would not be isolating. Do you support his plan? Should you be isolating now?
Well, Nick, I would personally distinguish between those that are living with someone who's got COVID and those that have been pinged because they've seen someone at work or whatever. And therefore, in my position, I'm acutely aware that, as I say, our boy's actually got COVID at the moment, therefore theoretically could pass it on to any of the rest of us any moment. So I personally wouldn't put myself into a scheme like that, and certainly wouldn't do what the Prime Minister tried to do, which is get out of it altogether on a pilot. But where it's not a family member that you're living with, I think then maybe we need to look at that again. But I'm conscious of the fact that, we are in the same household as our boy who's still got COVID, unfortunately.
I mean, some of the leaders of trades unions are saying to key workers in transport and food to ignore this exemption plan. You've probably seen this front page already. Steve Headley, who's with the RMT, even talked about possible strike action. Would you support that?
No, I don't think that's the right way, Nick. I think that if it is possible to show that with a double vaccination and a negative test, critical workers can go back to work, I would support that. Obviously, we need to keep an eye on how safe it is. We need to be cautious, but we need to keep our critical sectors working, and I think we should support exemptions that allow us to do that.
All right, let's go to other calls. Laura's in Reigate. Laura, you're on the radio. Good morning.
Hello, good morning. Good morning, Sakir.
Hi, Laura. Reigate is where I went to school,
Oh,
so I
gosh.
know
I
Reigate
know.
very well.
Reigate Grammar, of course.
I'm aware of that, absolutely.
What's your question to a former old boy of the town?
Yeah, my claim to fame, tenuous. So I work in the NHS. I've worked in the NHS for a long time now. I'm a psychologist. My mum also works in the NHS. And so you can probably tell where this question's going. I'd like to.
Well, Laura, as you probably know, my wife works in the NHS, so I've got an interest in the NHS.
Yes, absolutely. So I'd like your view on the proposed 3% pay increase, and whether you think that's a sufficient pay increase given what the NHS has been through over the pandemic and the work of the staff. From my experience, morale at the moment is quite low. People have been struggling, not feeling particularly appreciated. And I think this proposed 3% rise is only going to contribute to that, unfortunately.
Yeah, Laura, listen, I think it's not enough and it's not fair after what everybody in the NHS has been through in the last year and a half. We all know how hard it's been in that period dealing with the pandemic, dealing with everything around the pandemic. And I don't know what it was like in your hospital, but certainly where my wife works, when at the height of this, and I'm thinking about Christmas and early New Year, every day she had a day off or a weekend, she was being texted to ask if she could come in. And so lots of NHS staff were not only doing the work that obviously they're expected to do, but doing much more on top of that. So I don't think it's fair. Obviously, I support the fact that the unions are now consulting the workforce on what they think of it. But it's not fair. And I am struck by the morale point because I've been to a lot of hospitals in the last few months and morale is very low because it's been such a hard year and a half. And also many hospitals are now gearing up for the backlog of cases. It's not as if things have eased off now.
You mentioned unions, Sir Keir, that some unions are talking about a 15% increase. Do you support that?
Well, look, I think it would have to be negotiated. 15% is high. But I think what the unions are doing now is right, which is to say we're going to go back to our workforce with the 3% that's, as it were, on the table and consulting on that. Let's see what comes out of that, what the response is when they consult their workforce. But I certainly support the fact they're doing it. And I do think that the having clapped the NHS, the government has in the end treated them very, very badly, along with other frontline workers.
OK, and were the consultation to lead to possibility of strike action, would you support that?
Nobody wants to see strike action in the NHS. And Nick and Laura as well, having seen, I mean, because my wife works in the NHS and all of us have seen just how hard they work, the idea that all these people in the NHS have gone from state of mind of putting so much in over the last 18 months to even think about strike action just shows how shoddily they have been treated. How has the government managed to achieve, this mood change from huge goodwill, massively hard work, to now even talking about strike action?
I have to say, will you be saying that to Mark Drayford, who runs the Labour? There's had 3% pay rise there, and he's part of your team. He's on the Labour ticket. Yeah, so has he shoddily treated his NHS
I think
staff?
the morale in the NHS here really started to go down when the government put the 1% forward. I mean, obviously it's 3% now coming out of the independent body, but when the government put that 1% for England on the table, I picked it up straight away when I went into hospitals. Right. The anger and frustration.
But you don't think there's anger and frustration in Cardiff and in Swansea and in Pontypridd and wherever else they might choose to go? There isn't anger.
Nick, the anger and frustration was a direct result of the 1% that the government put forward, and it was immediate. I went to hospitals the week after that was proposed, and people coming up to me, sometimes openly, sometimes just whispering in my ear about just how angry they were.
So the nurses and orderlies in Welsh hospitals are very happy with their pay award of 3% because they didn't have the initial insult of the 1%. They're all very happy there, are they, in Wales?
No, I'm not saying that, but I am saying that I think anybody in the NHS knows when was the sort of week that the mood changed, and it was when that 1% was put on the table. Okay. It was very obvious.
Laura, thanks for the great work you do. Thank you so much. And indeed, I'm so sorry, your mum as well, for the great work both of you do. Thank you very much. Stephen Wickford, you're through to Sir Keir. Go ahead. Good morning.
Good morning, Nick, and good morning, Sir Keir.
Hi, Steve.
I had the misfortune, I think, to be at the European Championship final, where the only thing more distressing than losing on penalties once again was the chaotic scenes of actually getting in. Where I was, the problem started around the massive delays which were caused by checking COVID vaccination statuses or recent negative tests. Same thing recently games to cricket. As soon as the queues were too bad, they were simply just waved through with no COVID checks at all. So for me now, 2 major events and my proof of double vaccination and the kids' negative tests have not even been so much as even glanced at. So my question to you is, on the basis COVID passports are flawed and a negative test is simply ignored or indeed faked, what is your view now on an appropriate way to be able to access live matches without it now being a political football?
Well, Steve, firstly, let me commiserate on being there for the final and watching England go out on penalties again. I was there too. I watched that in agony. I was there in Euro 96 and I watched it in...
Well, hang on, I think we've worked out the link. In the unlikely event England get to another major semi or final, you're not allowed to go. On you go, Sir Keir.
But Steve, so I've been going to England goes for a very long time and I really couldn't believe that we were going out on penalties again. On the trouble that night, the first thing I'd say, Steve, is I'm not going to let those that broke into the ground off the hook on some basis that it was because of checks that they did that. They jumped the barrier. They didn't have tickets. They caused absolute mayhem. I was in the foyer area when they ran in. I could see what they were doing. They ran straight into the seats and spread out so that the stewards would have real trouble trying to find out who they were. So for me, none of that was to do with the checks at the turnstile. These were people without tickets who were jumping the barrier and causing all sorts of trouble as soon as they got into the ground. On the broad point you're putting, I think we've got to be careful at mass events, and certainly the principle of double vaccination and a negative test is one I would support. That was one I was very happy to sign up to go and watch England in the Euros. I think tests are actually more useful than double vaccinations, as the Health Secretary has shown. He, of course, got COVID just about 10 days ago now. I know he's through it now, but he had been double vaccinated. So I actually think tests are much more useful. And going back to the NHS have been doing testing of their staff 3 times a week for the last, I don't know how many months, as a way of making sure they can get their staff back in. So, Steve, I think that the idea that we can go back to mass sporting events or other events without any checks is not one I subscribe to.
Will you be supporting the so-called vaccine passports as and when it comes before the Commons, Sir Keir?
Yeah, well, Nick, I will look carefully at what the government puts forward, because they have.
Well, I have to say, what you've said so far, you seem minded to support.
Yeah,
I don't hear sort of blatant opposition to the idea currently.
No, Nick, I want to be pragmatic about it. I want to make sure that sports and all sectors are opened up as quickly as possible. I think that passports on their own aren't enough because, as we know, sadly, you can be double jabbed and still get the new variant. So it's got to be passports plus testing. I would, and that would be for sporting events, etc. It depends on what the government puts on the table. What I don't want to see, just to be very clear about this, Nick, is I don't want to see vaccine passports used on an everyday basis for access to critical things like health, dentistry, food, etc. So for sporting events, I'll look at what the government puts on the table. I want to be pragmatic because we all want all business sectors and sporting sectors to return as quickly as possible, but not for everyday use, because I don't want to see people denied health, dentistry, food because they haven't got a vaccine passport.
You referenced Wembley and the chaotic scenes that you witnessed. I wasn't there, you were. There is a suggestion the police should have done more. Do you think they should, Sir Keir?
I think that the police and security should have anticipated what might have happened. It was pretty obvious there were quite a lot of people outside without tickets. They weren't there to cheer the England coach, and it didn't seem to me. Therefore, I was concerned that had happened. I haven't seen a breach of security like that of football for a very, very long time, Nick. As every football fan knows, week in, week out, you can go to football and really not see any trouble at all. So I was surprised at that. But the group that broke in, there's no excusing. They knew what they were doing. They were causing maximum problems for the stewards, and they took advantage of the situation and broke in and caused havoc.
And staying with the police, you'll be aware that the Police Federation of England and Wales have had a vote of no confidence in Home Secretary Priti Patel, which is effectively, in a sense, trying to give her the sack. Your response to that?
Well, I'm not surprised. I think the government has let down the police over 10 years now. It's all very well saying they're recruiting more officers now, but they stripped 21,000 out over the last 10 years. They are now gradually replacing some of those officers. Police have been through, added challenges over the last 18 months. They've got no pay rise, and they feel very, very let down by a Home Secretary. So I think her position is untenable.
And lastly, on policing, Boris Johnson, the Prime Minister, put an idea out in a newspaper article yesterday in the Sunday Express, suggesting that anyone who had a crime would sort of effectively be given their own individual named police officer. Crime experts are saying this is, quote, a gimmick and a headlining stunt. Sir Keir?
It's a ridiculous gimmick. I'm all for improving the way victims are treated in our criminal justice system. I've been working on that for many, many years, but this is a gimmick. Just look at the number of offences and the number of police officers, and you'll see that the police officers are not going to be named just for one offence. They'll have bags of contacts. They need to get on with investigating a crime. The idea that they are the single sort of point of call to be phoned up by a victim, of course, have a system where victims get information, they're consulted, they're engaged. I'm absolutely in favour of that. I would actually put that in law. This is just a gimmick by a Prime Minister. Yet again, he loves sound bites, he loves slogans, he loves gimmicks. But every time you look beyond it, there's nothing there. This one won't work. It won't improve. If anything, it'll make things worse because individual officers work shifts, they're doing investigations, they're off duty. It will actually slow things down. It's an ill thought through gimmick.
Let's go to other calls. Sir Keir, thank you. Oliver's in Newry in Northern Ireland. Oliver, your question and the call to Sir Keir. Morning.
Good morning, Nick. Good morning, Keir.
Good morning, Oliver. Where are you in Northern Ireland?
I'm outside of Newry in a place called Restreva, an idyllic place on the border.
Oh, no, Oliver, I worked in Northern Ireland for 6 years with the policing board and the police over there. So I know Northern Ireland very well, and I love Northern Ireland. And I was there 2 weeks ago.
Sure, very good. Yeah, you'll have been enjoying some nice weather if that's the case.
It was fantastic.
Can I move you? We're enjoying this little travel card from auditioning for Judith Chalmers. But Sir Keir, I must move you to the meat of the matter. Oliver, your question to the leader of the Labour Party, if you would.
Sure. So, Keir, given that the Good Friday Agreement enshrines the right of both communities to pursue their preferred constitutional arrangement through the principle of consent, why have you chosen to side with unionists in promoting the union? And don't you think this is a silly position, given that the opinion polls are pointing the way towards growing support for United Ireland since Brexit?
Well, look, Oliver, firstly, I am absolutely a firm supporter of the Good Friday Agreement. It's one of the proudest achievements of Tony Blair, our former Prime Minister, and everything that I worked on and for in Northern Ireland when I was there for 6 years, and everything I've done as leader of the Labour Party has been based on the Good Friday Agreement. Obviously, that agreement has carefully worked out principles for the border, for the unification of Ireland, etc. And everything I do would be guided by that and by the principles in the Good Friday Agreement.
It's such a complex issue. Let's allow Oliver a comeback. Oliver?
Yeah.
Well, I guess the point that we're trying to make here is that Brexit has opened up the Good Friday Agreement to be sort of realised in all its potential, and obviously that's what we're talking about is the constitutional arrangement of people's lives here. And since the protocol doesn't seem to be very popular among the community at the heart of the question, don't you think that it's time to re-engineer what we see the union being, especially in context in Northern Ireland, a state where we are not included in the UK in terms of access to certain infrastructures and very simple things like we can't access things here like you can. Like you can't. Not available in Northern Ireland, is it?
All right. Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, that leads us in. We need to get you on this, Sir Keir, if we can. Obviously, the Northern Ireland part of the Brexit deal, we now see there are problems. This is a deal you supported, of course. The deal you supported, Sir Keir. Why did you vote for it?
Because the alternative was no deal, which would be 10 times worse for Northern Ireland and for the whole of the United Kingdom.
So this is good that we witness now, Sir Keir?
Well, the Northern Ireland Protocol, when I was over there, Nick, 2 weeks ago, I could not believe the loss of trust in the Prime Minister in the traditional role of honest broker in Northern Ireland. And when I say loss of trust, I mean both communities, because whatever the Prime Minister and Lord Frost say now,
He's the
my
negotiator, just to remind listeners. Go ahead. Yep.
Yeah, everybody in Northern Ireland that I spoke to knows very well that the Prime Minister knew what he was negotiating, that he missold it, misdescribed what it was, and now he's trying to pretend that it's not his.
But you supported
fault.
it, Sir Keir.
Well, Nick, the option was to vote for the deal or to leave with no deal, and I think that leaving with no deal would have been the worst of all circumstances for Northern Ireland. What the Prime Minister now needs to do is to get this protocol to work and stop pretending it's somebody else's problem. People in Northern Ireland, he's taking them for fools if he thinks that he didn't really negotiate this protocol or didn't really understand it. They're not fools, and they want to see him resolve this as quickly as possible.
And do you think it can be resolved? Because it would appear that currently the EU is taking quite a hard line along the lines of you signed it, so you're stuck with it. Do you think there is some wriggle room? And just at that point, the line freezes again. So let's try and get Sir Keir back. This is, of course, what's called the Northern Ireland Protocol that is causing so many issues in the Brexit negotiations. And the point we're exploring, which is Sir Keir is not alone, of course, in opposing it. Just to remind you, of course, both Boris Johnson and Ursula von der Leyen failing to reach agreement. I think we've got you back, Sir Keir. Do you think there is a possibility of opening talks again between the European Union and the UK, Sir Keir?
On making the protocol work, yes. Okay. On reopening the whole negotiation, no.
Okay.
But both sides need to be flexible, Nick.
Thank you for that. Oliver, you reference people's lives. Now, this show has done quite a lot of work on what's called the loan charge, which, just to remind people, sadly, at least 7 people have taken their lives. Others have attempted to take their lives. And it is thought that thousands of people could be brought to the verge of or have been made bankrupt. As part of that, we have been speaking with Keith Gordon, who's a leading tax barrister. Indeed, he's made many media appearances about that. Sir Keir, in the previous hour, we spoke with him again because we're covering this story. It turns out, actually, that he happens to be a constituent of yours. He left this question.
I've been trying to contact Sir Keir about this. I'm a constituent of his, and I'm not really getting the feeling that he's actually taking much interest in it. Anyone with more than a grain of humanity who actually understands what is going on should be screaming from the rooftops about the loan charge. So my single question for Sir Keir is, why are you still not fighting against this injustice?
Say that again.
Sir Keir, can you hear me? We are battling this. I don't think you can hear me. Just to remind everybody, the loan charge, 76 MPs across parties have urged the government to drop a tax policy known as the loan charge, saying it could cause thousands of bankruptcies. It was brought in to close a tax loophole. It's left many freelancers. Let me know when we have so. Okay, sorry, we're battling both of us, but we're doing it in a very manful way. Can you hear me now? So
I can hear you.
Are you familiar with the line, "Can you hear me, Mother"? It goes back to musical days.
I can, Nick. And I took the this morning. I listened to the show, and therefore I actually heard Keith Gordon. I think you've just played him again, but as it happens, I heard him.
Okay, so he's distressed. He says he's tried to contact you. He's not getting much of a response, and he wants to see the opposition's stance on this. Sir Keir.
Yeah, well, the first thing is he's absolutely got a point about the injustice of this. People set up their tax arrangements according to what the law was at the time in good faith, and now, as you and he described half an hour or so ago before I came on, the impact it's had on people. I don't know why Keith is having difficulty getting hold of me. That probably is an issue at my end. What I will do is I'll get hold of Keith directly as a result of this, Nick, because one of the great things about this is I can take away issues and look at them. Talk to David Davis. We did support one of the amendments last time, not the one that Keith wanted us to support, but...
Oh, Lord, this is proving mighty difficult. I don't know what the problems are. OK, let's try one more go with Sir Keir, because although there are many issues, there are 2 more things that I want to get questions into, Sir Keir, and I know you do too. Paul, if you can bear with us, you are next up on the course as we just put to bed that issue of the loan charge. Boris Johnson on that had said, well, I think we need to put the call as direct to Sir Keir, actually, guys. So responding to the letter so far, HMRC have said we must uphold the fundamental principle concerning loan charge that individuals are responsible for their own tax affairs, and it is right that we continue to tackle these type of avoidance schemes as they deprive public services of vital funding. But therein lies very much the rub of this particular issue. OK, let's see if we can get a final couple of questions in to Sir Keir. I'm being told that maybe we've got contact again. Have we got Sir Keir Starmer? Hello, Keir. Hello, Keir. It's not happening, is it? OK, I think we might try and actually... Can we get Sir Keir on the phone to do a last couple of calls? Let's just... put him on the phone now, because there are people who are holding, and it would be a good idea if we just put a couple of calls. So if you can free up, I want to keep this one that I'm flashing to you now, so you put him through on the other one. It would be hugely helpful. We'll try again with Sir Keir Starmer as we bring this particular call, Keir. Okay, that's joyous. All right, so let's just look at some of the areas that we've covered so far on this. We've talked about the issues of vaccine passports, which seem to have, although he wants to hear a lot more detail on that, seems to have initial support from Keir Starmer. This, of course, would be necessary for attendance to football matches and others. NHS is very strong that 3% is nothing like enough, not necessarily getting onto the line that it should be. Up to 15%. He wants to see more work on that. OK, let's try and get another couple of questions in. I think we're just going to go via a phone line now. Hopefully, Paul in Camden, you will be able to speak to Sir Keir. Sorry, go ahead, Paul. Ask your question if you would.
Yes, good morning, gentlemen. I'd like to ask Keir two questions, both related. Do you agree, sir, with Dawn Butler's comments in Parliament, and also she called Boris a liar? And my second question is, do you agree with her eviction from Parliament, and was that the correct thing to do?
Sir Keir.
Yeah, listen, I agree with what Dawn had to say. I think the Prime Minister is the master of untruths and half-truths, and Dawn was simply giving some examples of that. And I think there's a lot of people that feel that, it's the person who's not telling the truth rather than the person who's calling it out that ought to be on the hot spot. So I agree with Dawn on that. But I do want, in fairness to the temporary speaker, Judith Cummings, who was there, she did the right thing. She followed the rules because Parliament doesn't allow you to call other parliamentarians liars in the chamber. So I don't criticise the speaker, the deputy speaker, for what she did. She was following the rules. But do I support Dawn in what she said? I absolutely do. OK, thanks for that, Paul. I'm going to put the last couple of questions, some of them have come from listeners, just to play safe on this. You may be aware, Sir Keir, there's a big piece in today's Financial Times, the headline, Left-Wingers and Moderate Fight for Unite's Soul. This is, of course, the Unite, the Union, Labour's biggest donor. The elections for the new leader take place, I understand, in exactly a month. Who are you backing? Well, I'm not campaigning in that. That's a matter for Unite, the Union and their members. What I want to do, Nick, is to complete my work in turning the Labour Party around and making us election ready for May 23 and making sure that we've got a strong prospectus, a strong manifesto to put to the country. So who would be the best teammate for that? Sharon Graham, Steve Turner or Gerard Coyne, who I read is your favoured candidate? I want whoever succeeds in that to work with me in the Labour Party so that we can build a united front going into the next general election. And Nick, I will work with whoever emerges as the General Secretary, as I work with all General Secretaries of the trade unions. OK. Sajid Javid had to apologise for the use of the word cower. Would you have used that word? And is it necessary to apologise? I wouldn't have used it. He was wrong to. It was very insensitive. I spent last Wednesday, before I had to rush home, talking to some of the COVID bereaved. They thought it was very, very insensitive. Now, Sajid has recognised that and he's apologised, and that's the right thing to do. So he shouldn't have used it. He's apologised. That's the right thing to do. He actually sent me good wishes when he heard that we were in this position with my son having COVID. So I know him well, and he did the right thing in apologising. And lastly, police are looking at footage from an anti-lockdown protest where a speaker referenced the hanging of doctors and nurses at the Nuremberg trials. This was Kate Shemirani, a former nurse, asking for details of NHS workers to be collected and sent to her, reminding everyone, of course, you once served as DPP. If this were to cross your desk, is it a crime? Yeah, it's absolutely shocking. And I think the footage was, I saw a bit of it just on social media, was shocking to see. And I do hope it's going to be investigated and dealt with appropriately. But it was absolutely shocking. And some of the things that are said and done in the names of some of these protests, I think, are an affront to all of us that believe in everything the NHS and the front line are doing.
Thanks for battling through. I think this one was about as good as England's penalty takes a few weeks ago. Hey, best wishes to your boy, Sir Keir. Thank you for coming on.
Thanks so much, Nick.
OK,
Thanks.
See you soon. Sir Keir Starmer, leader of the Labour Party, appearing here on LBC eventually at 9:33 News. Simon Conway.
Sir Keir Starmer has suggested on LBC that he'll support the use of vaccine passports for venues like nightclubs and football stadiums, but the Labour leaders insisted they should be used alongside negative COVID tests. His party's support may be necessary to get the policy through the Commons, with some Tory MPs against the idea. A clean-up operation is underway in parts of London affected by flash floods following yesterday's torrential downpours. Homes, roads, tube stations and 2 accident and emergency hospitals were affected. Tom Daley has secured